Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today I would like to start the video by asking you a question. What do you think of the 2022 generation of cars now that it's over? And I'll sum up what I think in just one phrase. I both loved and hated it at the same time. I loved that Alonso was able to fight for podiums again. I loved to see the team that I've liked for a long time win a championship or two again. I also loved to see Verstappen establish himself as one of the all-time greats of the sport and effectively becoming the best driver on the grid today. And I also loved that we got a season with 7 different race winners, but there are a lot of things that I hated. I hate how this generation of cars have killed racing in the rain, how the cars are big, heavy, bulky and seem like they're dragging themselves through the corners. And I also hate how it killed some of my favorite circuits like Spa and even Suzuka. And one of the things that I definitely hate about this generation is that they promised to end the DRS or reduce a lot the dependence on it, and it's delivered very little because the DRS feels still necessary, and not only necessary but also insufficient at times to provide good overtaking possibilities. And the result is that in 2025, 4 years after they were first implemented, the fans feel like the races have been very boring and that racing got worse overall. But is that really the truth, or is just the recency bias kicking in and making us believe that seasons like 2021 were better? Let's find out. The first season of the ground effect era was very encouraging. We got Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen ducking it out in the first races of the season. Max and Red Bull went on to dominate, but the season was still very interesting. We had 784 overtakes, way more than in 2021 that recorded only 599 overtakes. A 30% increase in overtakes is a lot. And this is only overtakes that are made on track. We are not counting lap 1 overtakes or pit stop ones. That's only on track action. And this of course only happened because fighting in the midfield became way easier overall. The downforce reduction in 2021 was about 45 to 50% of downforce loss when you were following a car close. When we got to 2022, that number was reduced to just 15% loss. What does that mean? That means that a lot of the hot, dirty air coming out of the car in front is not hitting you and your tires. So, number one, you are able to set up moves much easier because you're able to follow much closer. And number two, your tires don't get as hot, your car doesn't overheat as much, so you are able to stay close for more than one lap or a few corners. So in general, 2022 was regarded as a success in terms of the new regulations because they did exactly what they promised. They delivered more overtaking and the cars were able to follow close to each other and the drivers were reporting exactly that. All was good. But this success was very brief, and by 2023, reports came already from drivers in the teams saying that the progress made by the 2022 regulations was starting to become undone and overtaking was getting increasingly more difficult. In just the first 12 races, we had 78 less overtakes than in the first 12 races of 2022. But despite that, the overall count improved, with 858 overtakes throughout the whole season, more than the season in 2022. But this is a very misleading number, because one of the races especially, which was the Dutch Grand Prix in 2023, was chaotic. It was a record of overtakes in Formula 1 overall, and it was responsible for like 20% of the season's overtakes, with one lap recording I think 60 or 63 overtakes. Something insane like that. And this negative trend became all the more clear in 2024 and 2025, with the 2024 season registering only 788 overtakes, way less than in 2023. And in 2025, the scenario got even worse, with an average of only 30.9 overtakes per race, which is the lowest of all the ground effects era. And so for the fans, year after year, the promise of less dependence on DRS, clear racing, cars following each other closely, it was becoming further and further away from becoming a reality, and there was nothing that we could do about it. And the reasons for such a failure in the regulations were the same as always. Everyone wants to go fast, and if possible they want the other guys to go slower. And if they can make actively the other guys go slower, why not do that? The front wing end plates, for example, were designed initially or thought by the rule makers to make the air be diverted inwards towards the car itself. But the teams have found to, within the same set of rules, make the air go outwards as dirty air. The same happened with the wheel caps that was initially designed to prevent the wake from the front tires to be diverted to the car behind as dirty air, but the teams have managed to find a geometry that in combination with the brake ducts can conduct the airflow to become dirty air to the car behind. And the all-powerful floors that we've talked about here in the channel a lot recently have also contributed to that, because the sealing of the floors, of the side of the floors, was made in a way that basically could send the outwash to the car behind, and that air that was supposed to go upwards on the rear on the car was not going as upwards as it was initially intended to, and was ending up affecting a lot the cars behind. According to the FIA data, the impact of these was that by 2025, the downforce reduction caused by following another car in dirty air was a loss of 35% of the downforce. Back in 2022, that value was only 15%, and now it's much closer to the values of 2021 than those of 2022, which is alarming. There were some other tweaks made to the track that didn't help this case at all, and one of the tracks that I like to mention whenever I talk about this topic is Spa, because I feel like it's one of the tracks that suffered the most. It's one of those that it's a fan favorite and a driver favorite. Everyone likes Spa, but in 2024 and 2025 there was a huge lack of overtaking. And the only interesting aspect about those races were really the strategy, which made them a little interesting, because overtaking on track was basically impossible due to various reasons. The first one is that the DRS zones were shortened, so you don't have how to make an overtake on a straight or in the main braking zones. And the second reason is that the second sector of Spa is basically composed of medium and high speed corners. If you have a car that produces a lot of dirty air, you can produce a lot of downforce, so you can stay close to them during those kinds of corners that are very downforce demanding. And if you can't make overtakes neither on straights nor on corners, then basically a track becomes useless. And that's the case with Spa, unfortunately. If you told me that 5 years ago, I would have said that you were joking, because it was impossible for Spa not to give great racing, but once again, that's where 2025 got us. This brings us to what is probably the most hated thing about the 2022 generation of cars. They are big, they are bulky, and they are stiff. Back in 2021, the cars were already big and kinda bulky, but they were very nimble because of the way they produced the downforce. But the ground effect era adds a element to that, because producing the downforce using the suction of the ground has an interesting side effect. The cars become very stiff and way less agile and nimble than they were before. So that is one added element that makes the racing worse. But overall, from 2021 to 2022, the cars increased almost 50 kilograms in weight. If you add all that up, including the 2017 wheelbase increase that went from 2 meters to 3.5 meters that we have right now, the cars became really big, and it's one of the things that Formula 1 fans hate the most. The only slight glimmer of hope here for us is that recently in 2026 the cars had their size reduced, but if you ask me, it feels very symbolic, and I don't think it will have any impact whatsoever in racing overall, but at least it's a first step. So the conclusion here for me is simple. The ground effect cars failed to achieve what they were proposed to, which were to bring us close fights between the drivers and to reduce the DRS usage. what we saw instead was an increase in DRS dependency and a lot of boring races that didn't add much to what was already in 2021, but this doesn't mean that this was a bad generation, just means that it's flawed just like all the others up till now. Maybe this one has a little more flaws than others, but overall I still think it was a great generation. We've had a lot of interesting seasons. Think back to 2023. It was very interesting. Max Verstappen dominated with the Red Bull and it was one of the biggest dominances ever. But below him, it was chaotic. You had Alonso gaining podiums left, right and center, then midway through the season came McLaren with an upgrade that made them podium contenders, and everyone was duking it out on the track like they should. It was a really interesting season, probably, in terms of racing and overall results, it was probably the best season of the Ground Effect era. If you then take a look at 2024, we had the Constructors' title fight between Ferrari and McLaren that went to the last race in Abu Dhabi and was very well disputed. You had the kind of title campaign that Norris tried to mount on Max Verstappen, but ultimately failed because of his and McLaren's mistakes. And overall, the racing got a little worse than 2023, but still very interesting, still a lot of fights. And for me, the best part of all, competitiveness between the teams. 7 different race winners is something just nothing short of insane, and it's very close to what we got in 2012. And to close it all off, we had 2025, which was not the best in terms of racing, had a fight for the title, which was very mild until Max Verstappen showed up, but then again, we had Verstappen show up midway through the season, coming back and climbing back to the top, finishing second on the final table of the drivers, and almost clinching the title. Only by 2 points he didn't win his 5th title in a row, which was insane. It was a very good season overall. So, although I hate a lot of things about the Ground Effect era cars, I also had a lot of fun and enjoyed a lot watching these past few seasons, and I think that's really where we should take from this generation of cars. All I can wish for is that 2026 brings the same competitiveness as, for example, 2024, but allows the drivers to follow each other more closely and provide us with more interesting battles. And only time will tell us if that's going to be the case. And if you want to discover it with me, don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel down below, that would make me very happy indeed. And I'll see you next week for the next video.